3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
I'm Laura Lepley, a Metro Park Ranger. Here at Oxbow Park, safety is our #1 priority, not only for our guests, but for our staff members. I'm at the Welcome Center and you're at the Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairway to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the reception desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at Oxbow Park.
Excellent. Yeah, I was waiting for someone to gavel the meeting. It's me now. So I will declare a quorum and call our Metro Council work session to order. Georgia, can you please call attendance?
Absolutely. Councilor Nolan.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councilor Lewis.
Present.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Good morning.
Councilor Simpson.
Present. Good morning.
Councilor Wong.
Present. I'll be there in about 10 minutes in person.
Wonderful. And Council President Gonzalez.
Right, present. Thank you so much, Georgia. All right, Council, we have 3 different presentations today. I am looking forward to all of them. Our first topic today is first of a series of presentations that we're going to have to talk about the region's economy and the intersection of land use that will run from now to the fall. Today, we're kicking off that series with a look at our current economic landscape. Our presenters will highlight disparities in outcomes and other dynamics that factor into policy discussions. My hope is that today's presentation provides the foundation for our future conversations about business recruitment, retention, agriculture, data centers, and other very salient topics. We have both Annalisa Kohler, our Legislative Affairs Manager, and Lorelei Juntanen. I'm sorry if I missed that. President and CEO of Eco Northwest. So thank you both for being here today and for helping us kick off the conversation on a topic that is top of mind for us and many Oregonians.
Thank you, Council President Gonzalez. Good morning, councilors. My name is Annalisa Kohler, and I am Metro's Legislative Affairs Manager. I just have a few introductory slides, and then really the bulk of the presentation is going to be by Lorelei here. If we could advance to the next slide, please. I do just want to do a little bit of table setting for you all. So you'll recall that alongside my colleagues in planning, development, and research, we were before you about a month or so ago to lay out the 2026 Economic Development Roadmap. So this is the work that is happening cross-departmentally around economic development in the next year. And there are 3 streams of work to that. There's the legislative solutions development, the SEDS update, and job-ready lands. And as we mentioned in that presentation, these are 3 separate streams of work, but they are also interconnected, and we are working very closely together. The presentation before you today is part of the legislative solutions development. We built this body of work in anticipation of the 2027 legislature and conversations and policy solutions that we anticipate will be advanced during that session. In preparation for that, we've proposed a series of work sessions over the summer and into the fall. And really the purpose of those work sessions are twofold. First it's to help council develop a shared understanding of the industrial land issues facing our region and our state. And then second, it's to provide an opportunity for council to provide and share perspectives and priorities to guide legislative solutions. Next slide. As Council President Gonzalez mentioned, today really is the first of those work sessions and kicks off this work. And we've invited Eco Northwest to share a baseline understanding of the region's and Oregon's current economic landscape, workforce conditions, outcome disparities, and general dynamics relevant to these upcoming policy discussions. The presentation will focus on information about disparities by race and ethnicity, gender, and other characteristics like age. We deliberately wanted to start with this presentation. We wanted to start with a foundational understanding of the inequities in Oregon's economy to ground us for future discussions moving forward. I've laid out in the slide above the kind of calendar, as you'll see, for this set of additional work sessions we'll be bringing to you. So in July, we're going to have Business Oregon and GPI come and talk about Oregon and the region's business recruitment. Later on in July, we're going to have the port and possibly other partners here to talk about traded sector industrial land supply. And then after August recess, over the course of early fall, we're going to do a deep dive into a couple of industry-specific panels, so looking at agriculture and then data centers, and then we will end with having Metro staff before you to talk about, looking back, how has industrial land been utilized inside Metro's UGB. Next slide. If you could advance, please. So it's coming, but throughout these key presentations, we will be asking you the same question to reflect on. So what are the key takeaways that council wants to see reflected in policy and funding solutions? The slide before you just has that discussion question on there. So with that table setting and introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Lorelei at Eco Northwest. They have a really fantastic presentation for you today. And just one quick note, it is a very thorough and deep presentation. So we're going to ask that you hold all your questions till the end if possible. I think we're a little concerned that we could make it to slide 3 and that's all as we start to really dive in, because it's really rich information. And so I think it'll be a good discussion. With that, Lorelei.
Great. Thank you so much, Annalisa. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you all for allowing me to take so much of your time this morning. And I agree with Annalisa that this is a very important topic and the right place to start the conversation that you're entering into around the intersection of land use and economic development. So if we can hit the first slide. It's just telling you what I'm going to talk to you about. So we're going to go through data on all of these different topics and talk about disparities in each of those categories. But before we get there, if you could hit the slide, please. Before we get there, I wanted to just provide a little bit of context about the very interesting economic moment that we're in right now. Not just in our region, but in the nation. This is a slide that we at Eco Northwest have been using to set the stage around kind of the factors that are holding us back from economic competitiveness. So starting with a series of factors that really are kind of putting an earthquake of change into our economy. We made this slide before we were at war with Iran, so probably need to update it to reflect that, plus the inflation that could be coming with it, trade wars, changes from AI, federal immigration policy, all of that is affecting our economy nationally and regionally. But there are some pieces of our competitive position that are within our control, and we should be focusing on those. So demographic trends, we all know that the workforce and population is aging and that it is growing more slowly. When you just look at births minus deaths, we are seeing slower natural population growth. We put that in the factors you can control because policy can affect who accesses what, but we can't really change those sort of overall trends. And slower growth is going to affect everything about the nation's economic growth. Domestic migration patterns, fewer people are moving just generally, and we are seeing fewer people moving to the Portland region. So also affecting growth. Housing affordability continues to be a major challenge, not just for the households that are experiencing cost of living issues, but for our ability to attract and retain workers. The central city role is a big question mark as we are facing increasing remote work and changes in the nature of retail. And then in our state, on top of all of that, is a fairly fragile fiscal system that's uniquely dependent on growth to be able to generate revenue. So we're just going to start with that good news story of all of the disparities that we're going to be talking about here are coming into that larger context of a particular moment in our economy when we really need to figure out how to create change. Next slide. So I also wanted to just give you kudos for starting specifically with the question of disparities. This has always been the right focus, but this particular moment adds another very important reason to care about economic disparities. And if you'll just grant me a moment to put it in economic terms, really what's happening is that we are not using our talent resources that we have here, not ones that we have to attract from outside, but the ones that we have here right now effectively. And this is a form of a market distortion that reduces the efficiency of the economy and affects everyone, not just those affected groups, but the whole economy's ability to thrive. So I see this not just as, in this particular moment, this should be core to our economic development strategy, thinking about how we take advantage of the talent that we have here and not leave folks on the sidelines. So that framing, keep that in mind. And then the next slide, this is like if we were in a commercial, we would be speaking very quickly and you would gloss over it. But important to note, when we get into the data, you are going to be seeing different sort of types of disaggregations, different geographies, and sometimes different time periods. The reason is really about sample sizes. And so I will try to call that out as I can. We've done what we can to disaggregate wherever we are able to, but we want to pay attention to margins of error and make sure that we're sharing information that's accurate. And then we have made the choice to just stick with the names of race and ethnicity categories that the census uses. And so you will see strange acronyms like AIAN and NHPI. Those are American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. I know those are not always the best names to be using, but just for the sake of consistency with the census groups, that's what we have chosen. And then we've got a couple of different geographies that we're going to be looking at when we're referring to the MSA. Just a reminder that that's the 7-county area. So that's Multnomah, Clackamas, Washington, Columbia, plus Clark and Skamania. So it includes Washington. And whenever we can, we're using the 3-county area. So I'll call that out when it's relevant. All right, let's get into it. The first category is jobs and workforce. Can you hit the next slide, please? And just go ahead and go to the next one. So we're going to go through a bunch of data on jobs and workforce, and just know that it gets really interesting when we start layering in wages. So this is foundational information just to get the data out and in your minds. Here we are showing you a full decade of employment change indexed to 2014 so that we can see where growth is happening. And we're showing you this relative to our peer cities. So these are cities that are statistically similar to the Portland MSA in terms of their job growth, their population, their industry profile, et cetera. And they're the ones that we're commonly using in presenting state of the economy information. So the obvious headline here is Portland, Vancouver, Hillsborough declining quite rapidly, starting out at the top of the pack and now trending downward into the middle of the pack. 13,800 fewer jobs just between 2023 and 2025 in this MSA. Next slide. This is looking at changes by industry. Headline here, big losses in basically every industry, with only private education and health services and government growing. The ones to really note are professional business services and manufacturing. Those are not just large losses in terms of numbers, but also relatively higher wage industries. Next slide. Okay, now we're gonna look, those were MSA. We just wanted to pull out the information in the Tri-County region and show a little bit of county difference. Clark County is really leading the pack. So in those previous numbers that we were looking at that included Clark County, that big growth in Clark County is pulling up the average. Multnomah County has been trending downward, and we've seen a lot of headlines about that, but I really want to call your attention to what's happening in Washington County, which is the seat of our tech and apparel industry. And those declines there are definitely something to be paying attention to if you care about the regional economy. Next, labor force status. So I'm going to just take a second to orient you to this chart because we're going to see a bunch of them that look similar. So we've got female and male at the bottom, and then also the total so that you can do a quick visual comparison of the breakout by race and ethnicity at the top. And we're also showing those little black lines. Those are showing whisker plots. Those are your margins of error. So largest margin of error for the American Indian and Native Hawaiian category. And essentially all that means is that we're showing you the actual percentage, but statistically the actual number could fall anywhere within that margin of error. Sometimes those are going to get very big. In this one, they're pretty good. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the chart. You'll see a bunch of those. Labor force is people who are of working age, who are employed or actively looking for work. So that does mean that it includes unemployed folks, but it doesn't include people who've just given up or who are retired or who are students. Big takeaway here is that labor force participation is highest for Hispanic or Latino folks. Quick note on female labor force participation has been lower than male for history. But we've actually seen some recent increases in labor force participation for women, particularly related to remote and hybrid work, as well as increases in access to childcare. So that story will show up throughout here. And then unemployment is the next slide. And here we're showing the US average so you can see where it's above and below. Very large margins of error for Alaska, Alaska natives and Native Hawaiians. So that one in particular, take with a grain of salt, but in general, what you are seeing here is higher unemployment rates for people of color. Next, I know I'm flying through this, but the point is to get the data out there so that you have it in your minds. Wanted to look at the distribution of our workforce, and these little green dots are showing you the percent of population. So any place where the bar chart is, or the bar is longer than the little green diamond, you are seeing overrepresentation in the workforce. So more Hispanic and Latino folks actively participating in the workforce than would be expected if it was proportionate to population, which is not surprising if you remember the previous chart that showed high labor force participation there. Keep moving. Share of employees that are people of color. And here again, we've got the metro region and the Oregon state as a whole at the bottom. So you can do a quick visual comparison. So the bars at the top are where you are seeing the highest concentration of people of color. So accommodation, food services, ag, forestry, admin support, and also manufacturing. These are also industries where we are generally seeing job losses. So keep that context in mind. That was a lot. We're going to dive into wages and start putting some dots together here in the next section. That was mostly just meant, thank you for the slide change, mostly just meant to get you a little bit grounded. The key takeaways here for you are the Portland metro area is losing jobs, labor force participation and unemployment vary by race, and participation's a little lower for white workers, even while unemployment is higher for workers of color. A lot of that is because they are participating in industries where there's a lot more churn. So they're going into and out of employment more frequently. And then the representation of workers of color is leaving a lot of talent on the sideline. And particularly important to note women in that situation where they are lower labor force participation than men and have been for a long time. All right. That's good. Let's move on and talk about wages. We're going to start with just a quick look at median wages. Some pretty clear disparities here. And margins of error, again, are something to just note as you're interpreting this chart. But essentially, all people of color, except for Asian, have a lower median wage than white. The gender story is very strong here. Female relative to male. In most instances, female wages are lower even than averages for people of color. And we're going to dig into the wage gap in a minute. Next slide is on real wages. Okay, this is not the way that people are generally used to seeing this. We are indexing it. So what we're showing you is change in wage. So we are seeing generally that Hispanic and Latino, female and Black wages are growing faster than the wages for the overall population. Some of that is because we're talking about a relatively low base, so a change shows up as a larger bump. But some of that is because of minimum wage. These are folks that are overrepresented in the lower wage jobs and have seen their wages going up as a result of that policy change. Let's dig into the wage gap. That's the next slide. This is showing this in the way that you all are probably used to thinking about the wage gap. So the dollar line there is relative to men. And you're seeing the wages relative to that for all of these different ethnic groups. Women make less than men pretty much across the board. I want you to note, however, the difference between 2017 and 2023, that it's actually getting smaller. And that may not look like a big change, but it is a very big deal. This has been one of the most stubborn challenges for people who pay attention to workforce trends for many decades. So any positive shift is very much worth noting. And again, is very likely tied to minimum wage. Particularly big for women who are Black or Hispanic. However,
this includes women?
It's all women. We're just looking at women in the bars. Yeah.
Oh.
This is the gender wage gap. Yep.
Okay.
So obvious disparities by race and ethnicity. Please note that the gap between Hispanic women and white women is larger than the gap between all women and all men. So the racial story, the gender story is obviously very strong and very important, but the racial story is also very prominent. Let's dig into a little bit of why on this, because I think this really matters. The next slide, please. This is kind of an old, we didn't do this research. We're pulling forward sort of the best state of the industry statistical look at what contributes to wage gap. It's a little old. It came out in 2017, but we don't have any reason to believe that any of this has meaningfully changed. If we redid the analysis, some of the numbers might shift around a little bit, but in general, you know, this is not moved significantly. So we're seeing on the left-hand side factors that narrow the gap. So we've got unionization and education there as things that narrow the gap. And then things that widen the gap on the right, race. We've got industry and occupation, and we've got work experience. Okay, so this is really critical because this is where it starts to get into the nexus with the policy conversation. If about, what is that, like 50% of your gap is explained by occupational sorting, that becomes a thing that you can pay attention to and start to work with. This 38% at the bottom that's unexplained is sort of fancy economist terms for like, but maybe that's sexism. Like we don't really know. 38% unexplained. Just note that that's there. And I also want to acknowledge that, of course, occupational sorting also has all kinds of gender and racial norms built into it. People make choices for a wide variety of reasons about what occupation they go into. So racism and sexism is sort of built into every aspect of this bar chart. However, the occupational sorting piece is a really large explanatory factor when you're trying to understand wage gap. All right, we're going to try to put it all together in this next slide. So first of all, just to orient you to it a little bit, on the vertical axis, you're seeing the percent that of a job that is where the workers have an associate degree or higher. And across the horizontal axis, you're seeing the percent that are BIPOC. So if you take that little bar, little circle there, educational, instruction, and library, like about 78% or so of those folks have an associate degree or higher, and about 25% or so of them are BIPOC. And then the colors, we're showing you how they relate to the median wage. So the darker colors are above the regional, the tri-county median wage, and the lower colors are below it. So very, very clear pattern here when you put all of this together, that you are seeing a concentration of people of color in lower wage jobs that require lower educational attainment to achieve. So this is our attempt to put all of the factors into one chart and help you to understand kind of where the disparities are coming. Big takeaways, next slide. Median wages for workers of color are lower, but they're growing faster. I don't want to just skip over some good news stories. Let's take a moment to celebrate that. Workers of color concentrated in lower wage industries, women's wages are lower than men's across all racial and ethnic groups. All right, last section is income, wealth, and economic well-being, and then we'll try to put it together a little bit into a conversation that connects back to your charge. Data are very, very poor for looking at income, wealth, and economic well-being across race and ethnicity. So what we're really going to be showing you here are indicators. This is looking at non-wage income, so investment income and safety net. I want to start by looking at the one in the lower left-hand corner where we're looking at self-employment. And this is interesting because it feels like it's a possible bright spot and something I'd love to be able to dig into a little bit more. Obviously, massive margins of error, but just looking at this initial cut at the data, it does appear that most racial and ethnic groups that are non-white are earning more self-employment labor than white folks are. Which is an interesting conversation around our startup ecosystem and what we're doing to support entrepreneurs. Yeah, it's appropriate. And then in the rest of it, you're seeing the same clear pattern of white folks having larger access to investment income and safety net income. And that is primarily because all of those are meaningfully influenced by lifetime earnings. So if you've got higher earnings, you're going to have higher interest earnings and you're going to have higher security income. Yeah.
I'm gonna forget this. That's why I'm gonna ask. So on the self-employment piece, is it that people of color are starting more small businesses because they can't get employment?
Well, they're starting more small businesses, and we have a slide about that in just a second.
Okay.
But the why behind it is what I'm not sure of. That would require a little bit more research, but that could very well be the case.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, the next slide is hitting at, it's really trying to get at an understanding of kind of cost of living and economic security. So here we're pulling the ALICE data. So ALICE is a sort of national indicator that's meant to be a better way of looking at income stability than poverty levels because it accounts for cost of living, right? So essentially it's trying to say, are you above a threshold that gives you some sort of financial ability to withstand an unexpected event and to meet all of your daily needs? And here again, we're comparing to the average of our peer cities. It's the same ones that we were looking at previously. We are looking at the share that is doing well here, right? So 38% of folks who are Black, who are living in the MSA, are above the ALICE threshold. However, across all of these, it appears that we're lagging behind our peers. So we dug into this a little bit to try to understand, is this because our cost of living is higher or is this because our incomes are lower? And we know that our incomes are increasing for people of color, but what we've found is that they are not increasing faster than our cost of living is. And in other MSAs, that pattern, that relationship is more beneficial. So this is one way to think about economic fragility. Okay, then to your question, the next slide about business ownership. I really wanted to highlight this. I will be honest that I don't fully understand this story, but I wanted to highlight what's going on specifically with Black business startups, because look at that skyrocket line for Portland. I suspect that that's because of the concerted effort that we've put in this region into supporting the startup environment and the Black Prosperity Initiative.
I mean, yes, and I mean, I'm part of that stat.
Uh-huh.
Finding employment in this region
It's challenging.
is challenging.
Yeah.
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 This to me feels like a story that's very much worth digging into more deeply to understand what's going on here. All right, next, homeownership. This is a story you all know. Here's some current data about it. The short version of the story is that people at the lower end of the income spectrum in that first quintile own homes at much lower rates than people at the upper end of the income spectrum. And when you look at it by race and ethnicity, in general, people of color own homes at lower rates than white people. And that's true even in the upper income spectrum, upper end of the income spectrum. And because homeownership is the major kind of vehicle for wealth generation, this is clearly a challenge that we need to be thinking about. All right, next one, and this is actually the last of the data dump slides, is median net worth by race and ethnicity. This is some interesting data that has come out of the Urban Institute. They have put together a dashboard. We'll send this deck out afterwards, obviously, and if you want to dig into it more, the citation is there. But essentially what they're doing is looking at median net worth estimated, which is the sum of the assets minus the sum of liabilities, and comparing that by residents of color. And here we're showing City of Portland compared to Oregon compared to the United States. And in most cases, residents of color, well, in all cases, residents of color are under the white population. And interesting patterns relative to the state that I think are worth digging into further. Okay, so let's try to put this into something that we can talk about, because I recognize that that was just a big data dump. The purpose was to give you data and information that can help to inform the remainder of the conversations. If you don't mind, slip into the next slide, please. And I wanna try to put this into a little bit of a wrap up. My job is not to give you a nice, neat wrap up, though. My job is to raise questions that you can keep in your mind as you go through the remainder of the presentations. So if you're looking for me to tell you how to solve income inequality in the United States in the next 10 minutes, you are going to be disappointed. What I'm going to do instead is give you the trends that I think you need to be most paying attention to and thinking about as you go through the remainder of the discussion. So the first trend is that we're going to be having fewer new jobs, net new jobs. Your job is growth management. It appears there's going to be less growth for you to be managing. So what does that mean in particular as you start to think about the intersection with economic development? Job growth is meaningfully tied to population growth, and that's slowing. Nationally, lower population means fewer jobs nationally. So even just the competitive environment to attract new jobs is much more challenged. So that's trend number one. Trend number two is, next slide, please, is more openings in jobs are going to be coming from turnover, right? Because we have fewer new jobs, we're going to need to be thinking about how we create access to jobs through turnover employment. This might look exactly like the last slide that we looked at, but unfortunately it is not, because it is the projection for how it's supposed to look over the course of the next 10 years that has come out of the OED. So essentially, not a lot of change in the way this chart looks based on the projections. What this seems to suggest is because lower wage occupations have higher turnover without any intervention or change in the market, we're going to continue to see the same pattern. And we need to start to think about how we break that cycle. Trend number three, next slide, is industry and occupational sorting. We've talked about this a little bit already, but this is going to continue to drive wage disparities. So think about those industries that are at the top of this chart that have higher annual wages, and what we need to do to create access to those jobs or grow more of them. And then trend number four is really getting into the concept of distributional impacts and how we think about growth and equity and their interrelationship. I'm pretty sure that my colleague, Mike Wilkerson, is going to be presenting to you in July. And this is the main focus of his presentation. So I'm giving you a little bit of a preview because I think it's so important. So what we're showing here is, just to help you quickly interpret this slide, we're showing income percentile across the bottom. So folks that are at the 5th percentile in the Portland metro region in 2012, we're actually making above the US metro average for what people in that same percentile bin were earning nationally, right? So that's a good news story. And you can see that even when you get to the 95th percentile, people are generally making about what the US metro average is making. 2019, between 2012 and 2019, we raised that whole line. How do we think about actions and strategies that will help us to do that? Let's move to the next slide. This adds 2024, and you can see, unfortunately, a little bit of a drop at the lower end of the income distribution. So trend number 4 is distributional impacts. And then the big questions that I want to leave you with, and maybe this is a good place for us to have some discussion with whatever time is remaining for us. If you can hit the next slide, please. That I think will be good to keep in mind. I don't know the answers to these questions, but I think they are completely pivotal for our entire region to figure out right now. If you go back to that very first slide and think about the economic moment that we're in and the changes that are coming at us and the losses that we are seeing, as we start to think about what our strategy is going to be, what is the theory of action for the intersection between growth management and economic development, in particular, in a moment when we don't think growth is going to be occurring at the same pace? What is that theory of action? And then how does that theory of action reduce disparities in economic outcomes by race and gender so that we're not leaving talent on the sideline and that we're taking advantage of the full range of talent that we have available to us in the region? So I'm going to stop talking. Hand it to you to do what you need to do, if anything.
Now I think we're here for questions. We're here for discussion.
Excellent, thanks. All right, councilors, let's have a good conversation. Let's ruminate on the information that's been shared, and any questions that we have for our presenters or for each other are welcome.
It's a lot to absorb.
It's a lot.
It's a very simple presentation, so. QED.
Yeah. I do love a little sarcasm.
Councilor Lewis. Councilor Lewis.
Sure. I'm going to start not by answering our theory of action, but just 2 questions. So first, you used in the bar chart showing different categories of employment. I think you used groupings done by the census, but one had admin and clerical roles combined with waste management jobs.
Yeah.
Why do they combine those 2?
I don't, you'd have to ask them that question.
I ask because that is actually one of the places we've put our thumb on the scale, because as we do our tonnage allocation for the region, we do look at the average wage at the transfer stations that are fighting for the tonnage, and that's how they can score points. So we've actually, as a region, said we want these waste management jobs to be really good jobs. And they are low barrier to entry, right? You need to know how to drive a truck or whatever, but you don't need a 4-year degree. So I think there's a lot, if there's a way to figure out why they've been lumped together and ways that we can kind of pull out our regional.
I would imagine that we can disaggregate those for you. I'm almost positive that we can actually, but I think we gave you enough data in this. I'm sorry we didn't give you that specific piece, but we'll dig it up and see if we can find it for you.
Yeah, I'm just worried. I'm just worried it's getting lost if we have actually made some impact by doing that.
Yeah, okay.
And then I have a theory on the self-employment chart where you were curious about the communities of color, workers of color, all starting ambitious side hustles. That was different from the chart where you actually were looking at firm ownership, and you were probably looking at tax returns, is that correct?
Let me.
I'm just guessing if it was based off of tax status.
The non-wage income is from the Census Bureau.
Yeah, we've got a lot of folks.
It's all Census Bureau.
Okay, we got a lot of folks who consider themselves independent contractors, when I would actually argue that they're misclassified and that their side hustle is working for DoorDash or Uber.
Yeah.
And that they are not actually out there gaining wealth like most self-employment looks like. So I wanna be really deep in the data before we take a win on the side hustles being wealth building and not actually misclassification and digging ourselves deeper into a hole.
I completely agree with that, which is why, well, even if you just look at margins of error, you have to be very careful. There may or may not actually be differences there. So that really does feel like a place that would benefit from deeper dive, in particular as we're trying to think about not leaving talent on the sidelines. So what does the startup and entrepreneurship environment look like? What are the supports that are available to help people to move into successful business ownership? And not just sort of the typical side hustle move. Yeah, I completely
Anything
agree
you
with
and
that.
your really smart team can do to disaggregate that data, reconstruct it so that we're not getting those false signals would be great.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty critical workforce and economic development question that the region needs to deeply understand.
Yeah. Those are my first two questions. I'm sure I'll have more, but I'll let people with better
Like
formed
there's
thoughts about.
Looks like
theory.
everybody has questions, so. Should I drive this or? Councilor-
Oh,
Okay,
I can try.
thank you. All right.
Thanks. Yeah. We'll go to Councilor Rosenthal, then Councilor Huang.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a lot of information, and more than can even be absorbed, much less unpacked in a short meeting like this. And there's two ways, obviously there's two ways to look at it. One is to look for exceptions to patterns, and the other one is to look for consistent patterns, such as you showed on one of the last slides where we're below on sort of across the board. So I think there's interesting. I have two questions, one sort of specific, which I think interests me, is the Hispanic workforce seems to be more engaged in occupation. They're more, but yet they are lower in average, you might call income, wealth, than even the other communities of color. And that's sort of something that requires a lot of, explanation and understanding. But my big question is education. Where is the role of education? It was mentioned once, but it seems like, as everybody knows, we have an education system that is not functioning as well as we think it should. Low education days, low performance in certain measures, and yet we are talking about having people trained for the future and improving this. And so where does education fit in, and how do we add this to the mix? It's not just, job lands, it's education and getting a workforce that is going to meet the needs of the future. And maybe we're suffering now from an education system that didn't educate people of all groups to meet the needs right now.
Education is very strongly related to access to higher wage industries. And I would broaden that to say that we need to also be thinking about workforce training. I would imagine that one of these hands that's up here is going to say the words AI at some point here, but that is a big disruptor that's coming at us that is going to require us to rethink what workforce training looks like, and might even shift how we think about where high wage industries sit. So I agree with that. And I think it obviously has to be a major focus of any economic development strategy. Human capital is incredibly important. It is a foundational piece of any economy. But it's a pretty complicated question in this particular moment.
Yeah. Councilor Huang.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And thanks for all the data dump.
Yeah.
I think I'm really curious. I have two questions, but first on the theory of action.
Yeah.
I think we definitely need one. And I'm wondering if you or anyone can really articulate if in decades past our region had a theory of action. Like it seemed like we went from timber to high tech apparel. Was that like an intentional thing, or did it just kind of happen because we had natural resources and cheap housing. Like, have we used the theory of action before? Because I think we had some good years, and I don't know if that was like there was a plan behind that, or it just happened because we got lucky, sort of thing.
That feels like a question if you asked 10 different people, you'd probably get 10 different answers to. From my perspective, having worked in some combination of land use planning and economic development in the Portland metro area, it has felt like the theory of action has been quality of place and second paycheck will drive a lot of the economic growth. And that has largely worked. You know, we have
But no longer works.
phenomenal investment in transit, in parks, in access to nature, in neighborhood amenities, and that has given the region a lot of notoriety and has actually driven a lot of folks to want to live here. Open question as to whether that will continue to work, which is not to say that we can turn our back on any of those quality of life things. Those are still core to our value proposition. But is that going to be enough in this particular moment, I think is the question.
And I've seen some places across the country that seem like they actually have a theory of action, maybe like North Carolina or I think Minneapolis. And I'm wondering if we could get some case studies, maybe I'm looking at you, David, on like what are some intentional like theories of action if we want to create our own, like what have other regions done to be like, we're gonna go after this and here are our steps to do it. Because I think that's, you know, if we're being challenged to find that theory, we should look at other theories that have worked for a number of places and see what, you know, our theory might be. Because I do think we need one. I just don't know if we've had one really. I mean, like all the things that you described were like access to nature and things like that. We were just blessed with God's gifts kind of thing. So,
well, I hope what you're hearing out of this presentation is that reducing economic disparities should be part of the theory of action.
Yeah.
That is like, I know it was a big data dump. We needed to get all that information out. That's the headline.
Yeah. And I think my second question is in economic development. It seems like we have an entrepreneurial spirit, which is great. And then we have a few like big businesses, not that many, but a few. And I'm hearing that we don't really have a very robust set of like medium-sized businesses. And when new businesses kind of get to a scale, most of them leave. Or maybe that's not what data shows, but it kind of seems like that. And I'm wondering what the role of medium-sized businesses would be in our economy. Like, are we lagging in that? Like, do we fail medium-sized businesses? Because we do have that entrepreneurial spirit. I think we do have a lot of good programs that support startups, but then we don't seem to have the organic growth that other places might have with, you know, getting to that medium level and then to the, you know, exit phase.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you see that, but anecdotally, that's what I'm hearing.
I would say that is going to be a really good question for you to ask when you have the targeted discussion around business recruitment and retention that I know is one of the next presentations that's coming up, because those are going to be folks that live in that world all day.
Well, it's not recruitment, right? We're trying to keep what we got.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, in terms of what role medium-sized businesses play in the business ecosystem, they're obviously critical. I mean, they are the ones that have the potential to grow into the larger businesses, right? Yep. And it is a big challenge to figure out how to scale as a business, to move from, you know, from a small to a medium to a large requires investment. Yep. And that's really challenging to do. So there's sort of a natural step function that economic development strategy, when it's well targeted, can help businesses overcome.
Okay, well, I'll keep my question for them.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Simpson and Councilor Holm.
Thank you, MCP Gonzalez. Thank you so much for your presentation and the massive data dump. I think as a Black person, those stats figures, no matter what community you move to, I'm from Houston originally, so if you probably pull Houston up, it'll probably look something similar. Mm-hmm. I do want to ask about the why, because, you know, and I'm gonna pull a little bit on Councilor Wong and a little bit on Councilor Rosenthal, just a bit, but like this ecosystem we're creating around businesses and small businesses and medium size and all of that. I think one, we have started going down the path of trying to figure out what our theory is by creating a job ready lands inventory, so that we can recruit, but also in my mind, I'm retain and support small businesses. And I do want to get into the why a lot of communities of color start small businesses, and are they failing or are they succeeding? Because sure, they can start them, but can they maintain them? That's for me is a critical piece. And I think to pull on Councilor Rosenthal around education, if we are going to, you know, mirror peer regions, right? So we never had a site selector. We've never put our shovel ready or industrial lands in the site selectors, and we start doing that. I don't think a company is going to come here if our education system is ranked last or we don't have a robust childcare network system. I mean, I'm not going to pack up and move my family to an area knowing that childcare is in limbo, or I don't know what I'm going to do, or if the education system is not as great as from where I'm leaving. And so like fostering or setting that ground, because I think we get ahead of our skis a little bit about like, let's get the jobs, let's set the foundation, right? We need people, for me to work comfortably, even our small businesses now here on the ground, we need childcare. So like that's a whole industry in itself that we can stand up to support what we have here now. And education, listen, we are not the state house. They got to do something down there in Salem, but that has to be a part of this conversation too. So.
Thanks. Councilor Nolan.
Mr. President, thanks. Thanks for being here. I love that from an economic interest perspective, you ask us, insist that we focus on closing the gap in wages and income. Councilor Lewis referred to our licensing program or our tonnage allocation program with transfer stations. That's a direct lever that we have and can frankly manipulate the market using it. We don't have very many of those though. But the state has more than we do. We have to depend, seems to me, on willing participants. We have to create an atmosphere that's somewhat similar to what at least Minneapolis-St. Paul used to have, with a local sense that businesses also need to be good neighbors. If we want to raise the wages or the median income of people of color, and I do, faster than increases among other employees, we have to recruit and nurture business owners, boards of directors, C-suite people who share that ambition. And I'm interested in whether you know any metropolitan areas that have succeeded in doing that. You've shown us in lots of data, too much to absorb in one sitting, but you've shown us that we're not keeping up with median wage and that kind of thing in cities that we consider our comparables. But do we know if they are doing that riveted on closing the disparity between white workers and workers of color? Where can we look to for solutions or actions that have been successful in raising median incomes so that everyone is closer to the same?
It's an interesting question, Councilor Nolan, and I think also calls for some case study work to really understand what has worked in other places. Off the top of my head, I am not immediately familiar with any government-led economic development strategy that had a private partner that was, which is I think what you're talking about, that was explicitly focused on wage gap reduction. That doesn't mean they don't exist.
Doesn't surprise
It's
me
worth
that it
looking
doesn't
into.
jump to the top of your head.
Mhm.
I suspect it's pretty rare, which I celebrate that we are asking that question. And it sounds like we are poised to prioritize that as one of our evaluations of whether our plan and implementation of it succeed. That we wouldn't be satisfied with a plan that aims to simply move up everybody. And especially when everybody moves up on a percentage basis, if everybody's median wage goes up 10%, those who are already at the top are further ahead of the folks at the bottom in raw dollars. So yes, we have to do some research on it. I mostly wanted to call attention to it because we talked, for example, about the hospitality industry, childcare. Those are lower wage jobs. And one way to close the gap is to do something similar to what we did with our transfer stations, our private transfer stations. Somehow create an incentive or a requirement that those wages buck the market, frankly, because that's what we have to do to close the racial gap, to close the BIPOC gap. We have to beat what is the normal momentum left untouched. Am I wrong? Okay.
I mean, I think that is the goal, and doing that in a moment when job growth is going to be harder to achieve, and you're really thinking about how you're doing it through replacement jobs. Becomes that it's not an easy moment.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. I have some thoughts before we go do another round. I'm really glad that we're having this conversation about a theory of action. Because to me, that also poses the question of inaction and the consequences of inaction. So there's like a question that I want to kind of frame with you right now, and then maybe you can help me ask it. But I am wondering through the lens of a bit of what Councilor Wong was just talking about with maybe what we've done for the last 20, 30, 40 years. If we keep doing that and don't change, kind of, if we keep implementing our current policy structure, what are the consequences of that, and who suffers, who kind of stays the same, who benefits? Is there any kind of insight that you have, kind of just the top of mind?
A couple of very quick reactions to that, and thank you for the question, President Gonzalez. We did have the one chart that shows the projection that looks exactly like the past or the current moment in time. And I mean, I think the story that you're being told there is that status quo without some kind of intervention is going to look at best kind of like what we're dealing with right now from a workforce perspective. I would add that when you think about the broader economic moment and that graphic that I showed at the top with all of the various challenges to competitiveness, when we're not growing, we don't have enough revenue to be able to, public revenue, to be able to solve the problems, to create the interventions that are going to be effective. So status quo with no change in that environment is going to look like increasing challenges with meeting public need.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. That's really insightful. Also been spending a lot of time thinking about the K-shaped economy that we're also living through. The rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. And the conversation revolving around the Governor's Prosperity Council over the last few weeks has been really I think there's been branches of conversation where economic theory or at least perspectives are diverging or clashing with each other. There's like different schools of thought that are kind of in conflict about how do we move forward as a state in that theory of action there. And so I've been trying to absorb what I'm seeing some of the most powerful stakeholders in the legislature, primarily our public employee unions and community groups are talking about in terms of what should be the priority. And then also seeing like a prosperity council, which is mostly CEOs, talking about tax burden and regulations and other things like that. So I just find it so interesting how there's these two schools of thought right now that feel to be vying for the governor's attention. That's just my opinion. I do think that one of the elements that is constantly missed in the conversation is the kind of the affordability quotient that Portland has. And I noticed in the charts that you mentioned, you're like, oh, this doesn't connect to affordability over time. This is just kind of a general, a static picture. But my understanding from like talking with different ECDEP professionals is that for the last 40, 50 years, our affordability on the West Coast has been one of our greatest advantages. And we've really lost that advantage, or at least that advantage is not as potent as it once was. So I'm curious if you could add a slide or two on affordability. What would that say about the headwinds that our region is facing? And we also talked a little bit about the second dividend and the quality of place and the approach that we've taken, and really who will get to benefit from that going forward if we can continue with the status quo. So anything on affordability that you can add?
We did have the slide in there that showed the ALICE thresholds, which are comparing cost of living essentially to income. And I know you all feel like you got a lot of data, but trust me, there's like 100 slides that you did not see. And one of them was digging into the cost of living change over time to understand what was going on with Portland relative to peer cities. Because our ALICE, we have fewer people who are achieving the ALICE threshold here than our peer cities do, right? So why is that? And it is because affordability is becoming more of a challenge. Even as wages are increasing, they are not increasing fast enough to keep up with affordability increases. So there's that piece, and then any number of different ways of slicing and dicing the housing market, whether you care about homeownership or rental or whatever, that would help relative to incomes, that would also tell the story of affordability being a challenge. So that is absolutely true and should be something that is considered as part of an economic development strategy, because it does reduce our competitiveness to be able to attract and retain jobs. Just a very quick response to your first bit. On a good day, I want to believe that those are not competing narratives, right? Like, how do we get to a both and? Of course, we need education. Of course, we need a rational tax system, I don't know. I feel like any theory of action can't ignore the fact that we need to invest in human capital and we need to have an environment that works well for businesses to do what businesses do.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm gonna come back to Councilor Lewis, and then we'll go to Councilor Rosenthal again.
Sure, thank you so much. I think one of our most pronounced theories of action here at Metro is we raise funds as a region to take care of the region. And we do that not only with our general tax base, but we go out time and time again and ask voters to say yes. Yes for housing, yes for parks. We ask them to say yes for transportation to no end. But we say, look, region, we're going to take care of the region. And I think that's kind of our most articulate way of our current status of sparking action is by being a funder. Yes, we have policy, and yes, we have our direct responsibilities, but we've leaned into being a funder. I think that might be on a collision course, as you've noted through several of these slides, that one of the main drivers for closing some of these gaps is minimum wage. And you're looking at minimum wage compared to our comparator cities. But I'm curious in your analysis, if when you look at our minimum wage compared to the rest of the state, because we have our zones, if our alignment with minimum wage being an island at Metro is actually doing a disservice when it comes to the underlying investment from the state of Oregon back into the region. Because not only is the region generating more because we're 40% plus of the people, we're the highest wage earners, not because of the people who work at Nike, but because the people who work at Safeway are making more money than the people who work at Safeway in Coos Bay. So what are we going to do to actually make sure that as we are additionally paying for additional services, it doesn't continue to give the legislature and the state budget an excuse to slip on their investment back into the region? I'm not asking for you to agree with my premise here, but I do think that there's some smart economists, it's either you or somebody you work with, who can say, is our high minimum wage island something that Metro policy needs to be leaning into and not counteracting or contradicting when it comes to comparing with the rest of the state and not just comparator cities?
I love that question, and you're right that it would require an analysis to be able to answer it from a fact base. Otherwise, it's just hypothesis, right? Or anecdote, and that doesn't do only does disservice to what is already a pretty heated conversation. So I'm not going to hypothesize right now on the answer to that question. But I do think it's worth noting that when you're making those kinds of changes in a context where we share a border with Washington, we're not operating as an island, you do have to think about what the unintended consequences are and try to at least understand the trade-offs so that you can evaluate them effectively.
Thanks. Councilor Rosenthal?
Thank you, Chair. A lot of complications, and setting aside the question of whether peer cities are really how comparable they are. I mean, I grew up in Milwaukee, and the Midwest is not the West Coast. So we really have a very different, and we're also just close to the sixth largest economy in the world. So we're in an unusual situation that makes it hard to compare us with other areas in some sense. But leaving aside that and getting to sort of a corollary to Councilor Lewis's question, where do you think are the biggest leverage points we have for changing the trajectory that we have? I can think of several, but I'm just wondering, in other words, we can't control the national economy, and we don't control tariffs, but we are affected by them. We haven't been able to control the war in Iran, which has increased prices for everybody. So what can we control that will have positive outcomes on a sort of regional, sub-regional basis?
I think Metro is an incredibly important player in the economic development ecosystem because of your land use charge. And I know that that's what all the rest of these presentations are about, and then what this discussion is meant to set up. So coming to think through, like, that is an interesting question for you all to contemplate, is how much leverage you get on economic development from land use decisions, and in particular from site readiness. And if you're moving more into a funder space, to getting those sites to a place where they're ready to go to support business growth. And having that align with a larger regional strategy, and have, I think it was you, Councilor Wong, who was talking about the need for us to share a theory of action broadly, understanding what lane Metro plays within a larger context of trying to achieve, because you don't control enough of the levers at Metro to really make massive change in the way the economy functions. So how can you show up in conversation with the rest of your regional partners with the resources that you have, I think is the question for you to be contemplating.
If I might ask one clarifying question, with that in mind, since we will never have sufficient land or easy land availability compared to Texas or Oklahoma or Kansas or Illinois or Ohio, how much leverage does that really give us?
You have an entire discussion just on that question. So what this is proving to me is that you set up the right frame of coming conversations. So hold that question, because I think it's a really critical one. But without land to support job growth, the region's kind of cooked. So figuring out how those pieces fit together is pretty important.
Great. Lorelei, thank you. I hope that we can invite you back again soon once we figure out all the problems and create the shiniest theory of action. I really appreciate the fact that you, as an important leader in our economic development space in Oregon and the Northwest, are joining us as well to help us understand the nuances and the contours of the problem that we're trying to work on. So
Thank you.
sincerely appreciate it. And Annalisa, thank you for your work and for putting this series together.
Thank
We're
you
gonna
for
move-
wading through all that data. And I know it was a lot, but hopefully you'll be able to reference back to the charts and get the little factoids that you need for the rest of your presentation series. That was the goal. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, counselors, sticking to the topic of economic development, we're going to talk a little bit about a project that Metro has the opportunity to partner on a few blocks away from here. And that is a project concept and structure for a food hall, a food cart pod and beer hall and event space, more specifically, that Prosper Portland is redeveloping adjacent to the convention center. So I'm going to ask for Cindy Wallace, Will Thier, who's head of asset management at Prosper Portland, Kurt Huffman, owner of Chef's Table, to come and present with us. Thank you for joining.
All right. Good morning, Council President and councilors. I'm Cindy Wallace. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Convention Center and the Portland Expo Center. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm joined here today with Will Thier with Prosper Portland and Kurt Huffman with Chef's Table. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. We're here to discuss the proposed redevelopment of the 910 MLK property into a food cart pod and beer hall concept adjacent to the Oregon Convention Center. This project represents a partnership between Metro and Prosper Portland designed to activate an underutilized property, support small business growth, improve the guest experience in the convention district, and strengthen the overall economic vitality of the Lloyd neighborhood. Next slide. Today, we'll walk through the project concept and background, discuss the business and operating model, review property renderings, and conclude with the timeline and next steps. We'll also leave time for questions and discussion. Next slide. This project includes a $3 million Metro loan to support redevelopment of the property in partnership with Prosper Portland. The loan structure includes a 4% annual interest rate over a 10-year repayment term. From Metro's perspective, this is both an economic development investment and a strategic investment in the convention district. The project is intended to create a community-serving destination while also enhancing the competitiveness of the Oregon Convention Center. Next slide. The vision for the project is to create a four-season gathering space that is welcoming, active, and integrated into the surrounding district. The concept emphasizes flexibility and dynamic use, serving convention guests, hotel visitors, neighborhood residents, and the broader community. Importantly, this project is designed to improve vibrancy and activity around the convention center campus while creating a safe, professional, and curated experience. Next slide. The 910 building sits between Northeast Holiday and Pacific Streets and between Grand and MLK. Market analysis and community engagement consistently highlighted a lack of food and beverage options in the district, particularly those that are accessible, locally driven, and active beyond convention event hours. Next slide. The property includes approximately 14,000 square feet of indoor space, 10,000 square feet of outdoor space, and is uniquely positioned directly adjacent to the convention center campus. Its location creates a strong opportunity to support convention guests while also serving residents and workers in the Lloyd neighborhood. The nearby plaza connections and surrounding hospitality assets create a natural environment for an activated food and beverage destination. Next slide. The project goals align strongly with both Prosper Portland's economic development objectives and Metro's broader goals around community vitality and economic opportunity. First, the project creates opportunities for food and beverage entrepreneurs, helping small businesses launch and scale. Second, it expands food options in the Lloyd neighborhood and improves amenities for visitors and residents. Third, it strengthens our convention package competitiveness by improving the overall guest experience around the OCC. And finally, it activates an underutilized property and contributes to a safer, more vibrant environment. Next slide. The business model is structured around renovation of the existing property and a master lease with a qualified operating partner. The operator would manage day-to-day operations, license food cart stalls to local vendors, and maintain regular public operating hours. In addition to serving the public, the venue would also support convention center related events and private rentals, creating additional activation and revenue opportunities. Next slide. After evaluating potential operators, Prosper Portland identified Chef's Table as the preferred operating partner. Chef's Table, has extensive experience opening and managing successful restaurant concepts throughout Portland and the region. Their experience in hospitality operations, curated food experiences, and local business partnerships make them well positioned to execute a project of this nature. Next slide. These renderings provide a visual representation of the proposed experience and physical activation of the site. You can see the integration of outdoor patio seating, pedestrian-oriented design, landscaping, and public art elements, including the MLK street-facing mural concept. The goal is to create an inviting and energetic environment that contributes positively to the area both during convention activity and during everyday neighborhood use. Next slide. This slide provides a more detailed look at the site layout and operational flow. The design emphasizes flexibility, outdoor gathering space, landscaping, and integration between food carts, seating areas, and the interior gathering hall. The layout is intended to support both casual daily use and larger event-driven activity connected to OCC. Next slide. The project has already advanced through several important milestones, including board approvals, design submissions, and contractor procurement. The next major steps include final permitting and the start of the construction later this year. The current target is for the food cart pod and beer hall to open August 2027. Overall, this project represents a long-term investment in district activation, entrepreneurship, and enhancing the experience surrounding the Oregon Convention Center. Next slide. Thank you for your time and consideration. We appreciate the partnership and support from Metro Council, Prosper Portland, Chef's Table, and many stakeholders who helped shape this project. We're happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks. Before we do any questions, I'm wondering if our guests would like to add anything as well or share any specific kind of inkling of what motivates you about this project or what drew you to the project.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple prepared statements, very short, and then we can answer your questions. So again, good morning, councilors. I'm Will Thier, real estate manager over at Prosper Portland. I'd just like to begin by thanking you all for your partnership and your support of this 910 MLK project, particularly Craig and Cindy, who have been great partners to work with all along the way so far. So thank you very much. Prosper Portland deeply values our longstanding collaboration with Metro. This investment reflects the strong regional commitment that we share in activating key sites near regional community assets like the Convention Center. This project transforms the long vacant property across the street from the Convention Center into a vibrant community asset, just like the Convention Center, bringing new food options, supporting local entrepreneurs, creating jobs, and strengthening activity in the Lloyd District. Your support will ensure that we can deliver a space that benefits the residents, small businesses, and visitors alike, and continues to the collective work that our two agencies have undertaken for years to make the central city a more welcoming, economically vibrant, culturally rich area for all Portlanders. So thank you very much.
Of course. Anything you'd like to share, Kurt?
I have no prepared statement. I'm just delighted to be part of the project, and it's been about 2 years of work that's kind of come to this. So very excited to be involved.
Thanks. All right, we'll go to the council now. Councilor Wong and then Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, President. And thank you for being here and all the work that's gone into it. Really excited for it. I've been hoping this happened for many years now. Councilor Simpson and I took a walk on our first day and we're like, we need some food out here. So I'm excited it's here. Can I start with some basics? Like, what is the total cost of a project?
The total project cost budget is currently $7.5 million.
Okay, so 3 million, so less than half. And how many vendors will there be if one fully leased up?
We are still in the design phase, so those numbers are shifting around based on the layout of that patio space. But right now we have a program for 10 individual food cart vendors. If we can fit more within the space in a way that still feels, still feels inviting, then, we will.
And are there any like restaurant or like food operations on the interior, or is that like a beer hall?
That's something that we are still discussing as part of the interior design. We will have a basic kitchen space because at certain times the food carts may be closed for the night, but there may be private events or just other sort of off-hour activities happening within the food hall, and so we want to be able to still be able to deliver food to folks in the space.
And I don't know if you've gotten to the permitting yet, but like at peak times, like how many customers could be on site on like it was full? Or legally by fire code, or
yeah, we haven't quite gotten that far in permitting in terms of receiving a maximum occupancy rating from the fire marshal, but we actually have our prelim meeting with the fire life safety group over at the city on Thursday.
So, but like the range, is it like a couple hundred or?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be significant. The building itself is 14,000 square feet, and that's just the interior of the building. And then there's the patio area, which is another 10,000 square feet. So
okay.
So it should be able to handle a significant.
Like 400 or 500 then probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
And I'll just add for convention business, and I envision, and I think that we all envision the idea of perhaps closing Pacific Street and then activating the Convention Center Plaza as well as the North Plaza outside of the Oregon Ballroom so that there can be a larger space for convention opening receptions, closing receptions. So not just the footprint of the food cart and beer hall, but expanding into the convention center spaces as well.
That sounds so lit.
I have some questions. And will you have any like operational authority or engagement, or is it Chef's Table, Prosper, they're going to run it? Like
in a situation like I just explained, we wouldn't have any operational involvement with the food cart and beer hall, but with supplementing into the Convention Center Plaza and then the North Plaza or the Oregon Ballroom, we would be involved in, yes.
And then, so from a business perspective, we're basically a silent partner.
Well, we're just loaning the funds.
Okay. Last question, and I'm glad we have Prosper here, but Prosper, like we talked about, invests a lot in our entrepreneurial network. We have the Inclusive Business Resource Network. In vendor selection, is there going to be like preference for entrepreneurs in the IBRN network? Like, are you matching your different goals as an agency to this somehow, like with your ECDev arm, with the real estate arm?
Yes, that has been a consistent discussion across all of the planning that we have done. We do fundamentally see this project as an economic development project. And so while we're still working out the details of how that interaction would work between our other economic development programs and this particular site and our master tenant, who ultimately is the one who is going to be managing those vendors, we definitely will be continuing to work toward that goal. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to see that. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Simpson and Councilor Lewis.
Thank you, President Gonzalez. Thank you, Cindy, for that presentation. Thank you all for visiting. Super excited about this because more lunch options, obviously, for our folks here in the building and around the community is nice. Quick question. I know we're going to be supporting OCC operations. In terms of like the overall entertainment district, like how do you plan on that site working with concerts, with games, with, you know, making sure that we are also providing that space for them too?
I know we've been hesitant to give an exact occupancy number, but I was at the architectural meeting yesterday and they are submitting for, it's a 750 person space in its first application. So very rare to find a hospitality venue anywhere in Portland outside of hotels and the convention center with that large of a capacity. So our intent and the way that the pro forma is built is that we have kind of peak days for the Blazers, the Fire, for a concert and so forth. And if you're familiar with the district, you know that, for instance, Spirit of 77 always fills up on those days. So we know that's kind of a passive, guaranteed, revenue stream. But we also have, and this is what's so critical in food and beverage, is that we have that volume in terms of capacity to absorb really a massive clientele. And we've built, if you were to look more closely at the layout, we have almost 90 linear feet of bar. So we have this very, very big motor that can absorb a very, very large clientele during those peak times. And events are very specific because it's kind of an hour and a half before, and nobody shows up 5 hours ahead of a Blazer game except for very dedicated fans. And so you have that hour and a half to 2 hours before the game. You got the hour and a half after the game. So you have to be organized in a way to absorb, that large of a crowd. So we feel very well positioned in terms of that. And then the whole model itself is built to scale up and down. So the carts are making all the food that are required by OLCC for liquor service. And then we'll have the ability in two different areas in the space to have kind of backup food service like we talked about. But I think it fits very, very well. It's kind of designed and engineered to thrive given the event, the event focus of that neighborhood.
Absolutely. No, I think that Max station right under 84, they underneath the house there, people are going to bypass that right after the game.
Right.
And see y'all. Don't go home right after the game is going to be the new motto. All right. I hope so too. In terms of, and I appreciate Councilor Wong's line of questioning around like the inclusive business network. I'm supportive of that. In terms of the construction of the site, are we looking at for primes and subs, making sure that we're looking at a diverse range of folks to do that building and that work?
Yes, we are. Prosper Portland has a couple of different workforce development and subcontracting equity policies that we apply to all of our public projects, and so this project would fall underneath those policies, and they have specific targets for inclusive businesses, for subs and for service providers, engineering firms, architects, things like that, and then also workforce training and apprenticeship in the trades.
Excellent, excellent. Don't forget to tap into our C2P2 program, obviously here at Metro. And my last question is security and safety. How do we secure the site? How do we make sure folks are safe? All of those things as they come to the site.
And you're saying, how do we keep the people on site safe, or just the aggregate?
On-site safety, also when it's closed, how do we keep it secure?
Right.
All of those things.
Right. So I think I'll answer that in two ways. Relative to the food carts themselves, the number one selling point for any cart pod in Portland now is safety. So if you look at the new ones, we did one in downtown Portland called Midtown Beer Garden. And that happened to be right next to where the decriminalization of fentanyl was kind of flourishing when we opened in 21. And so we built relatively robust fencing around it, which was a requirement just to get people on site because of the concerns. Here, we're kind of at an unparalleled level of safety relative to the vendors that we're bringing in, because it's truly within a fenced-in area. It'll be the most secure, food cart sites in Portland. As far as inside, we'll just have to follow the protocols that we follow with our bars about hiring security for larger evenings and events. And it's just, you have to do it to manage the business well, for the safety of your employees and all for the safety of the general public. So, and we have a very good track record as a group, and we've had one OLCC violation in 19 years with, over 100 different licenses. So, and also as an OLCC commissioner now, I happen to take these things very, very seriously. So I think we're in the top 1% in terms of enforcement for safety and liquor compliance. So those are core to our, values as a company.
Thank you for that. I'm just asking these questions because we got a plan for people to people.
Yeah.
That's all. That's it. So thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Lewis?
Sure, thank you. Two questions. The first question is along the lines of your design. I was talking to a disability advocate last night who was actually complaining about a new food cart in Milwaukee, and the pod is not designed very well for their accessibility needs, just based on the fact that food cart pods are indoor, outdoor, so the same square footage doesn't trigger for different kind of accessibility. So I would hope that we are, yes, replicating the look and feel of Portland food cart pods, but because we are welcoming the world through the convention center, that we've gone through an extra level to make sure it's accessible to people using all sorts of mobility devices that may not be standard in our Portland kind of food cart architectural practices or standards. If we can be helpful, I'm happy to help connect you and point out the problem at the pod that was an example, but yeah.
So it's a single level space. So you'll enter in kind of a large double door entry, and then the pod itself is at the same level. Huge roll up doors or larger, for the summertime, or man doors for the colder months. The pod platform itself, we have to dig up this outside parking lot to put in grease interceptors and all the required infrastructure, but that'll all be single level. The one dilemma that we've confronted with Midtown Beer Garden is how do you make the food carts themselves that are built at elevation to be, how do you figure out how to make that as accessible as possible to people in wheelchairs? And that's always a challenge. So the protocols we do is we just ask the people to step outside if they need to, and take the order that way. That's pretty much the only dilemma we've found, where it's just hard to figure out how to do that, because the carts can't be, they're on wheels, right? So they just can't be at a level that, for instance, would be like an ADA counter. So that's we'll be completely ADA accessible and compliant in every facet, as I think through it as a restaurant, except for that one. That's a challenge for us. And that just requires training and getting people sensitive to the needs of other people, right?
Yeah.
Just have to step outside and address them if that's how it is, for card payments sometimes and things like that.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm glad you thought that through and you have experience with that. There's also some of it, if you start stacking too many in, then the turn radius might get hard, but
yeah.
Well,
we've thought through that a lot yesterday, because when you bring in a cart, it's not like a wee little thing. And so how you get them in and out, how do you park them, how to get them back out. So I think the minimum corridor we have on site is 10 feet wide.
Okay.
And then the carts now by Multnomah County code have to be 5 feet apart, but nobody's ever going between the carts. But the circulation around the carts is no less than 10 feet and left to right.
Awesome, thank you. I'm glad you thought that through. My other question is around kind of the programming of the site, obviously with a convention center partnership. If it's a formal welcome reception, that sort of thing, you'll be working with Cindy and her team on booking out and reserving the space. Have y'all developed an agreement on what I would call a side event? So not just 5 people who meet up and want to go out to the bar, but let's say all the people at the convention from Minnesota. They have a Minnesota state chapter and they want to have reserved room for 75 people.
Right.
Would they book with you or would they book through the convention center? Do you have that agreement in place?
We don't have that agreement in place. I believe that they would book through us directly. We will have a team. We have 2 women that are currently manage our event spaces, and they'll be coming in to manage this. We've anticipated a 50-person private space, not 75. So for
Just grab that out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
maybe 50's enough.
Yeah, 50. I'll plant that. Yeah, 50 is what we've anticipated, although we are looking to expand that a little bit. But that'll be a private venue with an entrance on MLK that you can walk in. And we're hoping to be able to capture, I don't know, after, NBA players after games, we can have a private bar for them, or people visiting or anything like that. And then after that, it's very easy for us to accommodate large groups simply with wristbands like we do at other places. Because, 75 people within the context of 700, we have lots of space for them. But if they want a private venue right now, we're capped at the 50 person kind of enclosed venue with a private bar.
Okay. And I would hope you would give first right of, or reserve that spot for convention related business as long as you can. And obviously free it up as we get close to the date, but
Yeah,
we do want it to be an asset for the
Yeah,
convention.
I think we have we might call it a privileged relationship with the convention center. So they will be our friends and allies in this. But we also have to be fair to the team that's booking it. So I think we give first priority with some sort of calendar deadline, and we'll always run it by it when we have a hold.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, our requirement, or as I see it, our requirement is really the financial partnership and making sure that we're hitting our numbers and getting the return that prosper and, that we agreed on.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Nolan.
Thanks, Mr. President. This is fabulous. This is wonderful that you're bringing this to us. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I'm curious about the blend of business between conventions and walk-ins, for lack of a better word. And particularly as I think of that site, not much parking except underground at the convention center, which may or may not, probably won't be open all the hours that your restaurant will be open for the public. Do you think parking's going to be a problem, or do you expect most of your walk-in business to be off transit? No. You're at the intersection of Bus Line and the Max, but there's not a lot of on-street parking if you're going to accommodate 700 people.
Yeah, it's a curious, in Portland, in my time doing this, it's curious how there's not that much correlation between how busy a place is and nearby available parking. Portlanders are unusually willing to walk or park, somewhere adjacent and walk in. Some of our busiest places are located in areas that have almost no parking. And so I think that if you have the right mix, clearly, bike activity is super important. We always prioritize our relationship with PBOT to maximize the number of spaces we did. So I'm not particularly concerned about parking, especially since we have 80 to 90 some kind of big events where the size of the space can kind of absorb all those people. And then the balance of the time, we're hoping that the offering that we have, like Midtown Beer Garden or the Heist over in Southeast, draws in enough people that are just curious with this very distinct Portland experience. So that was kind of how we engineered it.
Great. That's encouraging. Yes. Thanks.
All right, wonderful. All right, not seeing any more hands. I want to say I'm very excited for this. Exactly when can we expect for, the first beer to be poured?
Right now, we are scheduled for opening in summer of 2027. We're trying to keep that schedule as tight as we can. We recently brought aboard our general contractor, Owen Gabbert, who has done a whole bunch of great projects around town. And we're really excited to have them on the team. So we'll be working with them to maintain that schedule. We're also working with city, obviously, to get our permits, as rapidly as possible. So I would expect it to probably be open in July or August, as Cindy mentioned.
Thanks. Great. I'm really happy to see this project. I've been trying to make the case that, especially as the city of Portland and the state are working diligently to wrap up a deal to renovate the Moda Center, that we should be looking at this district through the lens of Albina, Rose Quarter, Lloyd District. And it's not important just because the convention center's here, but it's because Metro's headquarters are here. We're active neighbors in this area. And so I feel an even deeper responsibility as a steward of this neighborhood to make it dynamic and vibrant and for Oregonians and also people that want to visit our great city. So this to me feels like a pearl that we're adding to the necklace of great projects to activate it here. And certainly look forward to that. I have a question that is actually not so associated with this. I think it's wonderful, but this is maybe more of a question for Marisa, because at the corner of this property, we have a vacant cafe as well that Metro, I believe we own that building on the corner of our property. And so as we're talking actively about reactivation, but we're also have an asset that is dormant, I would say. I would love for us to maybe think more, talk more at a future time about how our facilities team is thinking about that, how it can create some kind of synergy with the work happening down the street. But just wanted to plant that with you.
I thank you, President Gonzalez. I'm super open to that conversation. I think I started Metro March 2020, and I think I've never seen that space activated. I know it had like a coffee shop in the past, it had like other things, but I think there's absolutely opportunity to activate that. And I think I'm super pumped about this project. And I think one of the things that it does is sort of create the opportunity for us to engage as well here on this block. It's tough when you're trying to start something and there's like nothing else around, but with your project, with Spirit of 76, with some other things popping up in the neighborhood, we can kind of start to fill in, and then it's like breadcrumbs, throughout the neighborhood for people to come and visit and have different options. So I welcome that conversation, and look forward to having it and see what the options are.
Yeah,
I know. My understanding, it's a pretty awkward little space in there.
It is.
But, we can see what we can do.
It's definitely awkward. I know some of us have had the opportunity to do some tours to other cities, and also through just travel with family, things like that. Some of my favorite places that I've been to in a city or like Vancouver or wherever, you see these beer halls or these food halls that reflect the character, the values of a place, and seeing the renderings, I see some elements of like the Portland airport, and also this kind of like language of design that I think is becoming a very unique Portland language. And I'm so happy to see that because I want people to feel connected to why we love this place when they're here. And those impressions matter a lot. And thrilled that it's going to help us be more competitive too, as we're looking to book business and look at this public-private partnership and trying to center what is so exceptional about our city, which is our food and our food maker. So thank y'all. Hope to get another update as the project moves forward, but it's significant to have you here. Thanks. All right. Seeing no other questions, you are free to go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, our final presentation today is about Metro's procurement rules. So we're sticking very closely to the lens of economic development and the moving of capital. Over the past several years, Oregon Contracting Code has been revised, and our Metro staff have identified opportunities for there to be a greater efficiency in the procurement process. In addition, the equity and contracting rules are being updated to expand opportunities for small businesses and align with changing legal requirements. Today, staff will share with us proposed changes to ensure that we continue to comply, my favorite word these days, with state and federal law and always improve where we can. So I want to welcome Gabby Schuster, our procurement manager, who I believe is going to be joined by Ashley McCarran of Office of OMA, or Office of the Metro Attorney, to present. Before Gabby presents, her and I, we were able to speak at a recent kind of summit focused on equity in contracting and construction. And I saw firsthand the amount of respect and admiration that you have from 100 businesses in Oregon. And I want to say thank you so much for building that over years and years and years in the way that you carry Metro when you're trying to create opportunity for people in procurement. So to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Council President Gonzalez, and good morning, Metro Councilors. My voice sounds a little raspy because I was sick a few weeks ago, so bear with me. I'm Gabby Schuster, Procurement Manager, she, her pronouns. And we are here, I say we, because this has been a collaborative process between the Office of Metro Attorney, Ashley, and Finance. And we would like to talk to you about the proposed changes to the contracting rules and also equity in contracting rules. Next slide, please. I want to start by saying that the contracting rule, local contract review rules, LCRB, as we refer to them when we work every day with those rules, they were implemented in 2017, and we have since revised them many times. We usually come about every other year to make sure that these changes reflect the state of Oregon rules and make sure that policies remain clear and consistent and relevant. The proposed changes that we have for you are mostly administrative and align us better with the state of Oregon rules. So we want to make sure we are within those legal perimeters. The state frequently has rule changes, and we are always responding to that. But we also want to make sure that we are responsive to Metro's operational needs. So we keep a running list as we work daily, and my staff and I, we note everything, and in collaboration with OMA, when there's something that stands out to us that might need to be updated, and then when it's time to come to those rules up changes, we check the law and make sure that we align and we are effective. But I also want to point out that we have some particular items that have changed in the rules that are in regards to the contract amendment rules and sole source process. We want to make sure we clarify the processes. When we work with the rules, sometimes we notice it might not be as clear as it should be. And so those are changes, again, within the law that we are making just to clarify. And then I want to point out the probably most significant change in the LCRB rules, which is that we adopt a contract rule for small architect and engineering estimates. So this is a direct contract opportunity for $100,000 that is open to all businesses. So not only COVID, and I will come back to that again, for all small businesses. It is allowed by Oregon law, and we are adopting that for the first time into our rules. This brings me to the next slide, the equity in contracting section. This will be a little bit of a longer discussion. First of all, we are again making administrative changes to clarify current definitions, language, and also best business practices. And then in addition, we are making some targeted updates to make sure we remain current, effective, and aligned with our goals in inclusive economic opportunity. We want to make sure that we maintain our inclusive practices and offer fair opportunities and in this fair playing field for small businesses to succeed in the competition for metro contracts. So our goal is foster a contract environment that is fair for everybody, and that's what people have always asked for, right? So we are shifting from a compliance-based approach, and just to give you some examples, we used to require 3 co-bid firm bids. We're shifting from that to more of a strategy-focused approach. We are eliminating some outdated activities and also less effective one. So one of the outdated ones is the formerly known co-bid marketplace, where we said, you know, if you're a co-bid firm, you get a direct personal services or architect engineering contract for up to $100,000. I want to come back again and say we are adopting this broad $100,000 direct contracting opportunity from the state. So this is an opportunity, a greater opportunity, because it not only says only COVID, it says, you know, everybody, and we have so many small businesses who are actually not certified. We hear that all the time in our outreach work. The other thing that has, the other component that has not been working for a while is a set aside threshold for construction. It was a $50,000 construction threshold that was open only for COVID firms, and we have just not seen the success in that. It was, when it initially was implemented, it was successful, but $50,000 is nothing anymore in construction, and so we have not seen what we were hoping to get. With that, I want to say that we are focusing more on strengthening our engagement and outreach. And now I will talk a little bit more about what has worked for us best, what are our strongest activities. And these are the things that we will continue to do. It is our outreach and engagement program. You all know about the Metro Small Business Open House in partnership with Multnomah County, but also we frequently network with UAMI, and as Council President Gonzalez mentioned, NAMAC. They have their frequent meetings either monthly or every other week. We engage actively. We have learned over the years that relationship building and trust building is key. So having, as a small business, having this procurement metro face that shows up on a regular basis and in building that trust, we learned that people are more likely to bid on metro, especially for small businesses. They're more likely to bid on metro projects if they know a person, if they know, okay, this metro person shows up, they talk about these things. I trust that they are sincere, that they want me as a small business.
Yeah.
That has been very effective. And then the other component of our equity in contracting program is skills development and training. We have a really strong training program, and we have great funds to operate this program. We have contracts with small business organizations like the Business Development Institute, used to be Business Diversity Institute. They are experts in construction bid writing. So we offer bid writing. This is really the biggest barrier is, how do I get through? How do I write this bid? How do I understand this invitation to bid form, this request for proposal form? So BDI, Business Development Institute, they have been doing a great job, and we have actually been reporting on that in last year's equity and contracting report, so that we track like the training and what does that result into? Do these trainings result into?
Is that an organization that we partner with and we give them money, a contract to do TA?
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's a contract with them when we partner with them for training. Okay. The other part of it is we actually went out over the years, about every other year, we do a competitive process for coaches for proposal writing. So these are COVID certified small firms that had to actually competitively propose, and they are our proposal writing coaches. And we have the language in all of our solicitations, the invitation to bid and RFP, where we offer that training. So that's a very successful activity that we see good results in. Another thing we do is the procurement office hours. So you as a small business, we announce those things in our outreach work. You can sign up for an hour or more with us, and we will demystify the procurement process for you. We walk you through, and you can ask questions. You can have it in person, virtually, whatever you like. People love it, and we do too. It's actually really fun for us. We have another workshop that allows small businesses to partner up. There's a coach who trains people on how to partner up with small businesses to propose on large projects, because we do have very large projects at Metro sometimes. And then I want to move on to the last section in the equity in contracting program. It's the subcontractor equity program, and it stems from the formerly known good faith program. It is, it has been updated to subcontractor equity. We are maintaining all the activities in there. The program continues to require proactive and documented efforts by contractors to increase equitable subcontracting participation. The emphasis is on early engagement and fair access. For example, prime contractors, when they come to a bid walkthrough, are required to reach out to all subcontractors who expressed interest. We have sign-up sheets, and we ask people, are you a small business? Are you a COVID certified business? And prime contractors are required to actively engage with those businesses. And there are several other requirements where they have to keep that engagement and offer real opportunities. So I would say the key takeaway of this rules update is to position Metro to move beyond minimum requirements and towards a more impactful relationship-driven approach that meaningfully provides access for small businesses to participate in our procurement process. And then I have one last comment or update. The state of Oregon has implemented the Oregon Small Business Enterprise Certification. It's called OSBE. It is a race and gender neutral certification. They are in the process of rolling it out. If you go to the internet, you can hardly find anything. The only reason we know about it is through our networking and outreach, also with the state of Oregon. We are observing this program right now to see how the state is doing, what they're doing with it. And then if we feel like it is the time for us to integrate that in our equity and contracting program, we will come back to you and talk about that again. And with that last slide, I just want to thank you for your time to give us this opportunity today. I also want to thank Ashley, because Ashley empowers procurement to do what we do best. And she is an attorney who is accessible to us. Also her coworkers, there are some others that are very accessible to us. And without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Gabi. All right, Council, any comments or questions?
Good work.
Good work. Keep it up.
We will be coming July 9th to you to formally ask you to approve this. We just wanted to make sure you have an opportunity today to ask questions. And
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Gabi. Yeah, I want to emphasize what you're talking about earlier about the element of trust with these small businesses, especially, a small business entering the procurement space is, they're competing against large companies that have a team of procurement writers. And when a company decides to pursue a procurement opportunity, very small startup company, it can be expensive, hard, technical, and opportunity cost. And they're like, oh man, I could be doing other work instead of this. And so as we've seen the dashboard of incredible success over the years of the work that you're doing, I think the element of trust and continuing to show that Metro is a real partner in this is a big deal. I have one question that might be for the general group, but I've been in a few spaces with one of our local economic development leaders with Better Portland, is Stephen Green, who's one of the co-founders of that organization. And in some of the circles that I've been, he talks about how the state of Oregon in 2023 did a disparity report. That's kind of the legal foundation for an equity strategy at the state level is my kind of my take on that. And he constantly reminds me, he's like, the state has done nothing with that report, and that they did a follow-up report, and that basically the consultants were like, it's crazy how nothing has happened. And I'm curious, as we are, I think Duncan has heard the same thing too, but as we're navigating this like real complicated federal policy landscape that is kind of moving the goalposts around disparity, around equity, around like a shared prosperity agenda for our economy. I'm wondering how are you, Ashley, Marisa, how are you thinking about that work going forward and continuing to make sure that Metro is being as ambitious as possible, which I'm always feeling that energy. You're like, we're updating. But what do you see as the next 3 to 5 years of your work as the most important things that the council needs to know and be aware of, so that we can be ready for that?
Yeah, so in my opinion, and I usually run my thoughts by Ashley and see like, how can we do this? But, you know, living as someone who has moved to Portland and to the region, and I love Portland and Oregon, I think that this regional, local, like within the metro jurisdiction, economic development is really important. When I see the contracting dollars that we spend, you know, there's all this money comes through finance. We see that every day. My idea is also, you know, how can we best provide access to that here in our region? One of the things that so I would say, one advantage that we have here living in the procurement community, it is very small. We know people in person at the city, at Multnomah County, and also the state. We have in-person access to people like the COVID program, and then some leaders in the procurement. There are several procurement positions in the state of Oregon who are also sitting on the same board that I do, like an OAMI. There are conversations that happen in these small business development communities like OAMI and NAMAC. And of course, you know, we have to check with OMA what is possible and what is not. But I think that I've heard about the state of Oregon disparity study. They actually did a presentation on that in one of the procurement conferences, the Oregon Public Procurement Association, and there was no follow-up for us either. So we try to follow up with the people that we know in procurement. That is the access that we have as procurement people with the state. And so piece by piece, we find things out, and then I run it by Ashley. And so it's a very informal process, but that's how it works on my level.
I'm happy to add on to that. I think, in my view, procurement is one of the areas that would be ripe for an application of the targeted universalism framework, where you set some universal goals and then examine where businesses are situated in the societal structure, what barriers they face. I mean, you're kind of like organically talking about it in that way. And so, you know, looking at data, this is also a place where we have good data. So seeing where people are, you know, maybe doing some qualitative study on what the actual barriers are, like what is the thing that stops them from knowing about an opportunity? What is the thing that stops them from applying for opportunity? What is the thing that stops them, if they apply, from getting the opportunity? And then systematically looking at, you know, structural changes that we can make. Because I think, you know, if we address the structural barriers to, you know, small businesses or emerging businesses, for example, we're going to make the whole system better for everyone. And I think that's the vision that I have for Metro, not just in this area, but in other areas, is that vision of excellence where we don't just have process for process's sake. We have process to get to an end, to get to an outcome that we want, that the council has decided that we want to achieve. And so that I think is like the longer term question around procurement. And, thankfully, I feel like you and your team, the networks that you have built, we have just this great foundation to start from, and figure out how we can dial that in even more. We have also been exploring here earlier. Our CFO, Brian Kennedy, and I have been chatting about if there's any ways to support local businesses. And I think that we should have a separate conversation about that. But there are some constraints based on state law and interstate commerce clause. But I still think that there's maybe things that we could do there. So I think that's also a piece of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Since you mentioned Stephen Green and
Yeah, the buy local thing. There's always a bunch of great recommendations out there for us.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. I think that no other comments or questions that I'm seeing. Oh, Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, just a quick question. First of all, I appreciate the diligence and the proactive approach that you've taken on doing this. And I think it's something that's very important because small businesses grow into bigger businesses and you have to support them. My only question would be, how do we make sure that we apply these kinds of things throughout the region to small businesses in the other districts and not just in the core central area? How do we make sure that we have sort of a geographic equity?
That's a really good question. We think about that all the time in procurement, like which communities can we engage with. So we try to reach out to all 3 counties. We partner up with the West Side Open House, and my staff and I are actually part of the planning process for that. And then for the Gresham area, we have one staff member who consistently participates in the Gresham Business Chamber. It's a very well attended event that happens once a month, the Gresham Business Chamber meetings. Clackamas is still a little hard for us. We finally have a procurement manager in Clackamas County that is actually part of our group that we talk to. So we can probably expand our outreach to Clackamas County, but I would say for Washington, Multnomah County, with all of the business organizations that we work with, we have that widely covered. And you're right that we have to make sure that we announce these opportunities. So we take networking meetings or any special events that happen. We always make sure we announce our training program. We have actually a flyer that we always hand out, and we talk in person about it. We can probably be better on our website. That's on our list to do, to announce opportunities and everything that Metro offers a little more. But we try as much as we can to reach out.
You even have business cards with the QR code on it. Yes. Talk about it. Talk about it.
That's right. We have a QR code. We're so excited about that. QR code that connects you to us, and it connects you also to BitLocker.
Yes. There we go.
So we are communications is helping us with that as well. So I want to say that part of the challenge, being a procurement person, we are mostly finance people, and we are very introverted. We have a lot of thoughts that go around like ping pong balls in our heads, but getting the word out. So we do talk to communications and say, what can we do? And they said QR code. So we look for help from others to make sure that we have a good outreach strategy and communication strategy.
And we put those in play at Division Midway Alliance event.
Good.
Avi put them on my desk and I handed them. I just left them there.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, great work, Avi. Thank you, Councilor, for the question. All right, we'll let you go back to other things. Now we'll go to Chief Operating Officer Communications. So I'll invite our COO, Marisa Madrigal, for updates.
Thank you very much, President Gonzalez. We have one update for you today. John Blasher is going to give us an update on the Natural Areas and Capital Performance Oversight Committee. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon, Council President Gonzalez, councilors. Congratulations again, first time getting to be in one of your presiding meetings. And thank you again, Councilor Wong, for stepping in. You shared about the additional work that you took on and reminded me of when my older brother went to college. I got all of his chores, but I didn't get an increase in my allowance. So I appreciate all the work that you did for many months. As a tangent, I'm not here to talk about economic development, but hearing the work that you all were doing too. The Trust for Public Land recently came out with a report on the undeniable ROI of community parks and green spaces, and found that for every dollar invested in parks and green spaces, it's a $3 return. And so we have someone that's TPL now has a local representative here, and maybe they could come sometime and present and share some information about that, because I know that we're working on that as well with our levy renewal and system plan. But I'm here today to talk about the Bond Oversight Committee. The full name is very long, but just want to provide some updates that we had. Just past June 1st, the Oversight Committee had their second meeting of the calendar year. Thank you, Councilor Rosenthal, for joining, being a liaison to that. The meeting was in person. There was a virtual option. It was great to see a lot of members able to join in person that meeting last week. And it occurred right after you all appointed 6 new members to that committee. So many of them were able to join that committee meeting on the 1st, and we've started some onboarding for them. Thank you again, Councilor Rosenthal, for joining the onboarding yesterday, and we'll have another session coming up. To 2 topics that the committee members heard and discussed was an update on the large scale community visions program, which you all have seen recently. They talked about the 3rd round, the status, as well as they asked a lot of questions about current projects that have been awarded and what their status is and what happens after the IGA and how we're helping to hold those folks accountable to delivering on their promises. The second was a brief discussion and update on a topic that we're planning to bring to you all this summer, which was providing some updates on the bond evaluation framework, specifically talking about proximity and experience as it relates to access to nature and to green spaces. So we've been walking through with them that bond evaluation work and some of the reporting that will be coming to them later this fall. Yeah, we look forward to bringing that conversation to you all as well. We also bring regular updates to this committee on the 6 bond programs. So they've had a chance to hear recently about trails, and we'll be bringing some more on local share to them as well. As a reminder, this committee meets quarterly. So we've had 2 this year, and we'll have 2 more that'll be coming up. And if you'd ever like to join any of those, we welcome other folks to attend. Last little bit is just the 6 committee members that were recently appointed. So Bridget Brooks, who serves on the City of Tualatin Commission, and Brian Dellenbach with Tualatin Riverkeepers, David Granfield with Portland Parks and Rec, Dr. Leslie King with the Sandy River Watershed Council, Henry Lilly, Investment Sales Manager, and Nellie McAdams from the Oregon Agricultural Trust. So a great new group of folks. We're excited for them to be here. And one other piece I wanted to flag too is that thank you again for some of the councilors that were able to attend the Special Parks District Forum. Last week, we had about 90 people from across the country that provide parks and natural areas and trail services. This conference was different from others, where it's really folks that do the special district type stuff that we have, folks that have historic cemeteries and trails and random bits and bobs that we have. So having those folks come out and being able to host with THPRD was really great. So the Oregon Zoo hosted the closing event. So we appreciate you all. And next year it'll be out in Cincinnati. So if anyone is interested, we'll probably send some staff from our team to join the Special Parks District Forum. So sorry, I had more topics than just the Oversight Committee, but happy to take any questions about Bond Oversight Committee or anything else.
Well, we had a fun networking, visioning event last night.
That's right. What were we calling that? The Parks and Nature Lab, hosted by the Intertwine Alliance, bringing together the Future Visions program, along with some of our Parks, Recreation, Trails folks, to have Councilor Lewis and Councilor Wong with there to help folks weigh in on what they want the future vision of the region to look like, and really that slant on parks, green spaces, trails, along with land use development. So thank you all for joining that and getting some good conversations going.
That's so great. Love that.
Really nice to see the cross departmental collaboration. It was like GAFD, parks and planning. hosting a joint event on the future vision, parks, and natural areas. It was really cool. It's good to have us together. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
I'll just quickly mention that yesterday my office hosted a meeting and update for city managers across the region. And wanted to share that at the end, we had kind of like a share out. And we got a lot of different, Metro got a lot of different thank yous for different types of funding that have been deployed in the different cities. It was just like a really beautiful, positive interaction and meeting with folks. The other thing that folks shared sort of organically is that there are a lot of cities around the region that are looking at their rivers differently, looking at their downtowns and rivers and how to create access and improve their riverfronts. So I think that that continues to be a theme, and I think that there's definitely a role for Metro to play in helping facilitate and encourage that. So more to come on that, but just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Vanessa. Councilors, any updates to share with the broader group? Okay. All right, seeing none, I will adjourn our meeting, but we are adjourning to an executive session. Our next regular meeting for the Metro Council is scheduled for June 11th at 10 a.m. Council will now convene an executive session in room 375 pursuant to ORS 192.660 subsection 2I. To review and evaluate the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member who does not request an open hearing. Only members of the news media and designated staff will be allowed to attend the executive session. All right, council, thank you so much.
At what time will we reconvene?
Let's take 5 minutes, so 12:25. That's okay with folks?
12:45?
12:25.
25, okay.
That's only 4